Are we recording? We're recording.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, please. Wait, no, actually, no, we have to leave it.
Okay, no.
We have to leave it open. So. Question, am I the chair?
Yes, you are.
Effectively now, for those who are watching the moment. And I will call the meeting of the audit committee to order. And I believe we have one order of business on our agenda. And that is annual financial statements.
Hello, I'm Brent Jensen. I'm a partner with EFPR Group. We're the auditors for the Rochester Land Bank Corporation. And today you have the draft financial statements and draft reports of the board document in front of you. And I'm just going to run through this. If there's any questions along the way, feel free to stop me at any point. On the third page in this, the page that has our logo at the top right corner is our independent auditor's report. We expect to issue an unmodified or clean opinion. The audit was performed in accordance with generally accepted accounting standards and governmental accounting standards. And the financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. In addition to our opinion in front of the financial statements, on page 14, we have a report on internal control in accordance with government auditing standards. In that report, should we have found any issues with internal control that would have been either material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, we would have listed them there. There were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Additionally, we have a report on investment compliance that is required for public authorities in New York State. That is on page 16. And we found that it complied in all material respects with the requirements of the state laws. So that is the overall summary of all of the opinions and reports here. Beyond that, we'll go into a quick analysis of the overall financials and start on page 7. Okay, your total assets this year increased by almost 1.2 million. The majority of that was in cash. And the reality is that that relates directly to one of the liability items below. Your liabilities were up about 1.7 million, about 1.5 of which was coming from an increase in unearned revenue for the ARPA grant that was given to the land bank by the city. This is probably the single most important thing I'm going to say today beyond the opinions, is that money, that $2.3 million that's on your books right there, must be spent by December 31, 2026, or it will be given back to the federal government.
No pressure.
So that is probably your single most important thing, is that really, given that that is a significant portion of your cash balance, it's the biggest thing on your books right now, is the status you have a year and a half to spend.
Yeah,
actually less than that. So keeping that in mind, having a plan for that is very important. On the next page, we have the current year operating information. Your operating revenue was up about 900,000 year over year. The majority of that came from the New York State grant, which was up a little more than $800,000. And the only thing we saw during the audit that really changed was there were a couple adjustments given to us to actually increase that number and increase some of the liabilities and related expenses to get a little bit more of that charged during it. It was all supported, it was all proper. But I know that was a focus, trying to make sure we had as much of that spent down as possible to the. So that did also contribute to the $1.8 million increase in operating expenses, most of which is coming from the renovation and construction. And then there's several minor increases across the various categories. Things like the salary benefits and professional services are really where we're seeing some adjustments and some concentration on making sure you get as much charge into the grants as possible. So overall, you remain in a very good financial position. You have Your assets far exceed your liabilities. You have about $1 million of cash left even after the ARPA grant. Against only about 230,000 liabilities. So if you're looking at anything like a current ratio or any other indicator of what financial health would be, I would probably look at moving that ARPA grant that's a one-time item. And that's the reason north of 4-1, anything beyond 1-1 is a very strong financial position. So there's really no direct financial concern here based on anything we've seen. And we are seeing some increased level of activity in the programs, which is also something to know. We talked about last year in this meeting, is we have to do that. So the only real big takeaway would be that you have that tight timeline on that very large chunk of money there. Just to make sure that gets spent. Are there any
Plan to do so.
Are there any questions in relation to anything in the financial statement?
Not in relation to the financial statement, but the only good question I have, is there anything we should be aware of in the future, any changes either with, accepted government accounting standards or anything that's coming down the pipe that would affect us, particularly as a public authority? I know there's a lot of special provisions that public authorities in New York State have to adhere to under the public authorities law. Sure.
I'm not aware of anything that's a major change for public authorities specifically. There are always new accounting standards coming from the Government Accounting Standards Board. They've been very active over the past several years.
Yeah.
The good news is what's coming down the pipe right now is not stuff that I would expect to have any significant change here. And additionally, they're probably the least active they've been in a little bit, partially because they seem to have finished what seemed to be the project that they were on for years. For a long time, they were taking everything that used to be a commitment in the footnotes of a financial statement and pulling it all onto the balance sheet of financial statements. So if you look at things like the pension statements, the OPEB statements, the lease statements, all of that stuff used to be disclosed in the financial statement, but not on the front of a financial statement. You didn't see a number there for liabilities in those cases. Now, if you look at a government-wide financial statement, you see every one of those items on there. So for a long time, Gatsby was focusing on slowly bringing every one of those items that were previously committed into the liability section of your financial statements. They seem to be pretty well done with that project. They can't be thinking what else we're missing as a potential liability that they're not currently disclosing. So now they're focusing more on some of the formatting and other type of issues that are really not going to have any direct financial impact.
Okay, great.
So the only other thing I wanted to run through the last few pages of this are the reports of the board document. This is a pretty boilerplate document that lists a number of things that we are required to disclose to you in the course of our audit. I'm just going to run through a couple of the more significant ones to promote their verbally.
Sure.
The significant accounting policies are described in note 2 of your financial statement. There were no new significant accounting policies in the current year, and there were no transactions entered into for which there is lack of authoritative guidance or consensus. Really just means that you have the policies in place for the types of transactions. The performance of any financial statement includes some amount of accounting estimates. We looked to see that those estimates appeared to be reasonable and well supported, and we found no issue with those estimates. There was no difficulty in performing the audit. To the contrary, the team did a great job providing this opportunity needed and giving us this financial statement. The reality is that not a ton of our clients prepared their own financial statements. It's probably less than 50% of our public authority clients prepare their own financial statements completely and hand it over to us. That's what we get from the team. So that's also the thing you can take some pride in. Is the team is able to do that, which also further gives you confidence that they're able to give you detail throughout the year that is accurate.
Got a good team.
Yep. There were no statements that required correction or any uncorrected statements at the end of the audit. The only thing that really got adjusted were adjustments given to us for allocations that were being done to just work off the grant expenditures. No disagreements with management, and before we issue, we will have a management representation letter that will be provided and given to us to close out the audits. Yeah, that we should. So I think John signed this. And that's really everything that I needed to say to you today, unless there's any further questions about the
Nothing here. But it's present. Thank you for detailed, thorough work and appreciate comments. All the work that you put into it. If we have other action, then we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, no, wait.